Hello everybody and welcome to 5.4 day 2. We are looking at solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So yesterday we looked at day 1, which was radicals, and so today we're going to move on. I want to review a little bit about standard form. So let's take a look at what standard form is. It is ax squared plus bx plus c. And you might remember this from last chapter when we were talking about factoring. And now I want to talk about leading coefficient. Well, what does that mean? That means that a, b, and c are all coefficients, and they are numbers in front of a variable. So the leading coefficient would be a in our class. What it means to be written in standard form. I want us to take a look at the different steps we are going to take to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. I want you to keep in mind that the leading coefficient, so what we talked about, our a value must equal a positive 1. So again, a must equal positive 1. So the first thing that we do is we set the equation equal to 0. If the leading coefficient is not equal to 1, divide it out. And that's what we talked about in the previous sentence. Now once we set the equation equal to 0, we move the constant term to the other side. So we want to write it in this form: x squared plus bx plus blank equals blank minus 0. So what that means is we are going to be filling in those blanks further on in these steps. So hang tight and we will continue to fill these out. So our third step here is to fill in the left blank with b divided by 2 squared and the right blank with b divided by 2 squared and physically square it. So in this blank above we are going to put b divided by 2 squared and b divided by 2 squared. The next thing we can do is factor the left hand side and clean up the right side. Then we solve the remaining equation by undoing. So that was what we did in day 1. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this next problem. All right, now that we've taken a look at the different steps, I want to apply those steps to a couple of equations here. So you can notice that the first equation, we have our a term is not equal to 1, so we need to change that by dividing both sides by 2. We now have that x squared plus 4x minus 8 is equal to 0. Our next step, if you were to scroll back up, would be to add the c term to the other side. So we are adding 8 to both sides. We now have x squared plus 4x plus blank is equal to blank plus 8. Now this is where we are going to use our b over 2 squared to plug into those two blanks. You notice that our b term is equal to 4, so we have 4 divided by 2 squared equals 2 squared, which equals 4. So what we're doing is really adding 4 to each side. Now we want to use our t-table off to the side to figure out which two numbers multiply to 4 and add to 4. And you'll notice that the numbers 2 and 2 will make this happen. So if you follow me back, we are going to write this as x plus 2 squared, since we will be writing this as x plus 2 times x plus 2, which is the same thing. And we now have that equal to 4 plus 8 is 12. Now what we're going to do is square root both sides. So we have x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus square root of 12. Now the square root of 12 is not a perfect number, so we are going to break it up as the square root of 12 is equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, which can be rewritten as 2 times the square root of 3. So now we have that x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. We are going to subtract 2 to both sides, and we now have x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. And that is your answer for this problem. Now let's take a look at the next problem. This one is a little bit nicer for us. It has that a is already equal to 1. So we can skip dividing by 2, and our next step is to get that c value over to the right-hand side. So we're going to subtract 4 to both sides to get x squared minus 4x equals 12. Don't forget, we are going to be adding in those b over 2 squared terms to both sides. So we know that our b term is negative 4, so we'll have negative 4 divided by 2 squared is going to be negative 2 squared, which is equal to 4. So really what we're doing, similar to the last one, we're adding 4 to each side. Our new equation looks like this: x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 12 plus 4 is 16. Now what we want to do is factor using our t-table. So we'll go ahead and do that again, similarly to the last one. We want to find two numbers that multiply to that positive 4 and add to the negative 4. We know that negative 2 times a negative 2 is going to get a positive 4, and negative 2 plus a negative 2 is going to get a negative 4. So we can use what we found from our t-table to factor it, and similarly to the last one, we're going to have x minus 2 squared equals to that 16. So now what we do is we square root both sides, and we get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 4. So that means we're going to have two separate equations here. Our first equation is going to say x minus 2 is equal to the positive 4, and we also have that x minus 2 is equal to a negative 4. So we want to solve for x by adding 2. So our first equation gives us x is equal to 6, and our second equation is x is equal to negative 2. So our solution is x equals 6 and x equals negative 2. So now it's your job to try the you-try problems at the bottom right here. So go ahead and try those, and we will talk about them tomorrow.